Alright, so today we're going to look at your revision paper set 1, booklet B. Okay, first question over here. David observed 3 cell samples under a microscope. Okay, she made a drawings of them as shown in the diagram. State one similarity between cell A and cell C that cannot be found in cell B. So here's the trick. There are a few things that has to be found in all cells. Okay, but however, in this case, it cannot be found. Now, what are some things that has to be found in a typical cell? Typical, I'm not talking about specialized cells. Alright, it would be your nucleus, your cell membrane, and your cytoplasm. So these are the 3 things that will be found in all typical cells. Typical, so like for example, red blood cell is a specialized cell. Okay, so basically they ask you to state one similarity between A and C. So we know that they are plant cells. So plant cells, the one thing that they definitely have that animal cells don't have would be your cell wall. Okay, so in this case, they both have cell wall, but okay, B does not have your cell wall. So your answer would be cell wall. Just in case you don't know which one is your cell wall, I'm going to do a very quick label revision using C, because C looks like a typical plant cell. So the one that is the outermost is known as your cell wall. If it's pointing to the layer that is inside, this is your cell membrane. And then the space over here, this is your cytoplasm. What's over here, this circular oval shaped thing would be your chloroplast. And then after that, this empty space here is your large central vacuole. This would be your nucleus. Okay, so this is a typical plant cell. Next, the diagram below shows the plant from which cells A and C were taken. Which part of the plant, P or Q, were cells A and C taken from? So let's take a look at A and C. What is the main difference? So the main difference would be that your C actually have this circular item. So this is known as your chloroplast. So there are parts of your plants that would not have chloroplast for sure. Okay, so I'm going to highlight the parts for you and then just be very straightforward. So the parts that do not have would include your roots, and if you happen to have flowers or fruits, these are also part that do not have chloroplast. They are not green in color. Alright, so this is important for you. Now typically in exams, you're supposed to be able to figure it out on your own. But since I am going through this question, I will just point it out explicitly to you. So doesn't mean that all parts of the plants contain chloroplast, because their function is not to make food. So which part of it, okay, P is taken from? So P, basically it's cell C, because there is your chloroplast. And then your Q, in this case, your Q would be plant A. Sorry, cell A, because A does not have chloroplast. So because in your roots, your roots will not be able to receive any sunlight. So no point for chloroplast. It cannot absorb sunlight. Okay? Next, cell B was placed on a microscope slide containing two substances represented by L and M. After 5 minutes, she observed that substance M entered cell B. Okay? Alright, so this is what happens. So what does this tell you? B is still outside, but A went inside the cell. So which part of the cell enabled this observation to take place? So obviously, even without looking at it, but when you see this, it means that there must be some selection of items, right? That allows things to go through. So which part of a cell actually have this selection ability? That is actually your cell membrane. Okay, now I would like you to be very careful about how you explain the function. Many of you would choose to say that it allows certain substances to enter. Now that is, if I see the word certain substances, okay, I am inclined to give you the marks. However, that's not the best possible answer because the keyword to be used here should be control. The word, okay, allow is as if it's not selective. So your cell membrane is good enough, is powerful enough to be selective. So the word control should be there. Okay, the keyword here is control. Next, the two diagrams below show the cross-section of the reproductive system of a flower and a human respectively. State one similarity of part W and Y. So the first thing you should do is to do a very quick identification to help you better understand. So V over here would be your stigma, and W over here would be your ovary. Now I understand that you probably would not be able to see, and then most of you will start exclaiming that, oh, the diagram not shown clearly. If they wanted you to talk about the old view, they would have zoomed in and clearly pointed, okay, pointed the line towards a single view. But because they did a zoom out and they pointed to this structure over here, it tells you that they are talking about the ovary as a whole. Okay, sometimes you need to use your common sense. Next, this is your fallopian tube, and Y is your ovary. Z is actually your womb or your uterus. Okay, now while we're on this topic, I just want to stress that fertilization in the human takes place in the fallopian tube, not inside the womb, not at the uterus. So once fertilization actually occurs here, the fertilized egg will travel towards and implant itself into the uterus for growth. So now that you have labeled, okay, straight away you can see the commonality. This is the ovary, this is also the ovary. Okay, so what is the similar function? So they never ask you what is the name. So if you tell me that, oh, they are both the ovary, you are wrong. You have to tell me what are their functions. So you would say that both W and Y stores egg or protects or produces X. That is correct. Okay. Next, in diagram 2, which part X, Y, or Z will the fertilized egg developed? So development of egg is at part Z over here. Okay, but fertilization is inside the fallopian tube. I stress again. So Z, that's it. If part B is removed, would the flower be able to become a fruit? Explain your answer. So V is actually the stigma. So ask yourself this question. What is the function of the stigma? So the function of the stigma is to allow your pollen grains to land on it. So this process is known as pollination. So I need to see that part of the answer as part of your explanation. And then you talk about why no fruit. No fruit because no fertilization. Why no fertilization? Because no pollination. Okay, so it needs to be linked. So I can tell you, most of the time, right, the yes, no answer is 0 marks. No marks will be awarded for yes and no. Okay, marks is usually awarded only for the explanation part. So there needs to be 2 points. So what are the 2 points? Firstly, tell me no. Then after that, the first point. The flower would not be able to receive or to be pollinated without part B. Now, if you are very good, you can bracket and straight away put there stigma. Okay? Not required, but good practice. I'm teaching you how to answer in a higher order, because then it makes sense. Okay? Hence, and no pollen grains or no male sex cell would be able to fertilize the egg. So 2 points. First point, we are concerned with pollination. Second marking point, we're concerned with fertilization. So because pollination cannot happen, no male sex cell to go down to pollinate, to fertilize the egg. Okay? I want to stress, later on, I'm teaching forward, you would see that some of the students tend to make this confusion about pollination and fertilization. Alright, pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Fertilization is the fusion of the male and female sex cell. So you need to be very careful. Next, Alex carried out an experiment to find out how climbing stairs would affect his heart rate. He measured his heart rate before exercise and every 1 minute after he started. Alex stopped climbing the stairs after 10 minutes. He recorded his results in the graph shown below. Okay? So, in this case, they asked you, explain why Alex's heart rate increased as he climbed the stairs. So this is a very typical question on respiration and circulatory system integrated. There is another variation of this question where they talk about breathing rate. But in this case, they talk about heart rate. This tells me that they are concerned with the circulatory system. So in the circulatory system, alright, you have the heart. So when you are climbing the stairs, you are basically increasing your intensity of exercise. So when you increase your intensity of exercise, you need more energy. So to get more energy, you need more respiration. To have more respiration, you need to have more oxygen and digested food being transported to your muscle cells. And for that to happen, your heart has to pump faster. So if you do reverse engineering, you'll be able to get the answer. And then you just regurgitate the answer in the other sequence. So what would the answer look like? Okay, so you first have to say that your heart pumps faster. That is actually the key idea. So you would say that heart pumps faster. Because when your heart pumps faster, it accounts for the increase in heart rate. Because rate means how many beats per minute. So how come your heartbeat rate will increase? Because your heart pumps faster. Next thing, why the heart must pump faster? To transport more. The key word here is more. Because whether you are exercising or you're not exercising, your heart is still transporting digested food and oxygen to your muscle cells. Okay? If you don't have the word more, wrong. Because you are basically telling me that if you don't exercise, no digested food and oxygen will be transported to your muscle cells. So more oxygen and digested food. To the muscle cells. Now, why to the muscle cells? Because when you are climbing stairs, this is explicitly where more blood will go to. It's at higher order. So normal people will say all parts of the body, but you're exercising. It only makes sense to go to the muscle cells. I'm teaching you how to answer at a higher level. Okay? Now, why do you want that? So you want that in order to what? For more or increased rate of respiration to occur to release more energy to meet the increase energy demands of climbing stairs. Okay, in short, this part over here is talking about the exercise. So this answer is pretty standard. So you will need to write exactly what I told you over here when it comes to answering about why your heart rate increases. Okay? The difference is, please change this. If they tell you swimming, then you say swim. If they say running, you say run. Okay? And these two needs to come together, hand in hand. Next. Alex has a condition called asthma, which causes him to have difficulties breathing. The air tubes in his lungs become narrower, okay, during an asthma attack as shown in the diagram. Explain how narrowing of the air tubes in his lungs makes it difficult for Alex to breathe normally. Now here's the thing, okay? Look at this. Is it that the body is absorbing less oxygen at this time point? Not quite, right? Because the absorption of the oxygen actually comes only at this part, the later part of it. Correct? At this juncture that they tell you that it's swollen, air is still traveling. It is still not being absorbed. However, by the fact that it's being narrowed, means now there is less air. Less air that can enter your lungs equals to less oxygen being absorbed. So you need to be very careful about what you are saying and what you're referring to. A lot of you just went, oh, because less oxygen can be absorbed into the bloodstream. But why? It's because less air can enter the lungs. Right? So, the narrower air tubes allow less air to enter the lungs. If you write less oxygen is correct because less air equals less oxygen. But if you say absorb, that's a different story again, right? Because your air sacs are the one that's absorbing, not really your air tubes. Next, besides gases, state one other substance that the blood transport to all parts of the body. Now, you can put digested food. I will not accept nutrients, glucose, water, waste material. Okay? Next. Eddie conducted an experiment using two green plants, E and F, as shown in the diagram. So this is an experimental question. Your change variables needs to be identified. He cut and removed food carrying tubes and water carrying tubes of plant E, but removed only the food carrying tubes. So this over here would be your change variable. Okay, the cut stems were then immersed in a beaker of water containing red dye for 2 days. Which plant, E or F, would the leaves turn red? Explain your answer. So basically, your answer would be plant F. Why? Because when you think about it, both your plant F, right? Okay, only the food carrying tubes were removed. So basically, since only your food carrying tubes are removed, your water carrying tubes, they are still present. And you are able to transport your dye from this location upwards. This cannot be said for your plant E. Now, the one thing I want to caution everyone is, for this question, a lot of you did not answer the question because you were telling me why is it not E. I don't want. I want, the question is talking about the one that the leaves will turn red. So you have to explain to me about F and not tell me why not E. You are not answering the question. So plant F is because the water carrying tube is still present. Okay. Now, then after that, you need to tell me explicitly that the water carrying tubes are not removed. Okay, some of you say only the food carrying tubes are removed. But you see, there are other parts, you know. There's the leaf, there is the stem, there are roots. So I don't quite understand what you mean by only the food carrying tubes are removed. But there are so many other parts of the plants that could be still present. What? How do I know that you're making a comparison to water carrying tube? So you have to be explicit. Instead of telling me only food carrying tubes removed, you have to tell me water carrying tubes are not removed. Then after that, the next point you have to tell me would be red dye could still be transported from, okay, the roots to the leaves. So if you do not mention about the roots, okay, you lose half a mark. Because the function of the roots is to absorb the dye, the water. So without stating that the roots are present, you do not get the full marks. It's as simple as that. Using the same setup as above, Eddie conducted another experiment. He placed both E and F under the sun. Now, after 1 day, he removed one leaf from each plant and carried out a starch test using iodine. So, if there is starch test, you would know that they are talking about photosynthesis. Straight away, your word equation for photosynthesis should come up in your mind. I would like to remind everyone during exams, the first thing that you should be doing is to write your word equation for photosynthesis and respiration, because it is needed somewhere in the paper one. Okay, so they tell you that iodine solution turn dark blue, that means starch is present. Which plant leaf would turn dark blue? So your answer should be plant F. Now why? Because over here, plant E, the water carrying tube is already removed. So we know that in photosynthesis, water needs to be present in order for photosynthesis to occur. Without it, it cannot happen. It's as simple as that. So because of the water being present, water can still travel up to the leaves, and then photosynthesis can occur. Now, what is the general idea here? The general idea here would be that since water is needed for photosynthesis, only plant F is able to do that because the leaves can receive water. That is the key idea. Okay? So answer plant F. The leaves of plant F could obtain water. Now, then you're going to ask me, Mr. Chong, do I need to write that the water carrying tubes are intact? My answer to you is actually you don't need. But if you put it in, it's good. But why don't need? Because you realize your previous answer, you've already told me that. So that's why the requirement of this question, don't need. But does it mean that you're wrong? No. Okay, so it could obtain water. Okay, carbon dioxide, and sunlight for photosynthesis. Okay. Since plant F has, sorry, let me just redo this. Since photosynthesis require sunlight, water, plant F is able to photosynthesize. So the idea is that, firstly, is able to obtain the ingredients, or the items needed for photosynthesis. The second thing is, since it's able to obtain water, it is able to photosynthesize, producing starch. Okay? Next, Farah conducted an experiment to find out the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the box changes in the presence of a plant. She placed a green plant in a transparent glass box. Okay, a light was placed over the box as shown. So we know that this over here, since it's a transparent box, your plant is able to receive light. So if it's able to receive light, we know that photosynthesis is able to happen. Alright, so even without thinking about it, based on this, I already know that, okay, this is a photosynthesis question. I have what it takes. Okay. And then this person want to find out about the amount of carbon dioxide. So you should already reason with yourself that the carbon dioxide should actually decrease in the box because the plant is able to carry out photosynthesis. And when it carries out photosynthesis, it will take in carbon dioxide, thereby lowering the amount of carbon dioxide inside your box. At the same time, your oxygen would go up because doing photosynthesis, you will give out oxygen. So let's take a look. So which shows the changes in the amount of the two gases? So like what I explained, X, which is supposed to increase, should be your oxygen. And then Y would be your carbon dioxide because it is given out. Now I'm just going to quickly write down the word equation for you for photosynthesis, just in case you forgot. Okay? So please write it down because practice makes habitual. Okay? So water plus carbon dioxide in the presence of light energy and your chlorophyll found in your chloroplast will give you glucose together with oxygen. Okay? So from here, we can tell already, you are going to get oxygen. So your oxygen will go up, and at the same time, you will be using up your carbon dioxide. That's why your carbon dioxide goes down. Now, explain how you came to your conclusion. Now, let's just translate whatever that I've said into a proper answer. Now, here is the part that I need you to be careful. A lot of you just said this. You can do the carbon dioxide part. You would say, oh, because the plant was photosynthesizing, it takes in carbon dioxide. So because it takes in carbon dioxide, it lowers the amount of carbon dioxide. That's fine. But a lot of you were very careless with the oxygen because you just said that during photosynthesis, the plant produces oxygen. So produce oxygen, does it mean that it will give out the oxygen? No. Okay? They could just be trapped inside the plant. You realize that, right? So if it's trapped inside the plant, okay, it doesn't mean that it will cause any changes, right? So you need to be very careful. So you would say that during the process of photosynthesis, okay, as the plant photosynthesizes, it will take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. Alright, so my main problem is that a lot of you don't bother to put this word give out. You just go produce oxygen. But that doesn't mean you give up the surrounding, right? Okay.